sector, as well as looking at this quarter's data compared to last year. And I think we've got some really interesting insights, which I'd love to hear at the end if that's reflecting what you're seeing in the market as well. So the top of the funnel is really where the activity's happening at the moment. We're seeing a lot of growth in the top of the funnel. So we're seeing adverts are up 6.9% year on year. But really, the key thing to highlight on this slide is really the new candidate applications are up, 17.3%, and existing as well, up quite significantly at 12.3%. And this kind of it talks really to what I'm hearing is there's a lot more applications, there's a lot more candidates in the market at the moment, and really the challenge that recruiters are having is making sure that they can get through the volume, find the top candidates, deal with the applicants that they're getting, appropriately. So I think the increase in adverts, just actually go back, just highlight that increase in applications is way higher than the adverts posted as well. So we're seeing more people applying to each advert. And with all these extra top candidates, what we're seeing this year is a real spike in spec CVs being sent out by our users. So it's up 188% month on month from from January to February this year, but it's actually the highest level of spec CVs we've seen since 2021. So what we're seeing in engineering manufacturing is a really buoyant market where there's lots of candidates in the market, but there's maybe not as many jobs, and recruiters are starting to use spec out the top candidates that they don't have jobs for as a way to get more jobs, win more jobs, and do BD. So another really interesting thing that came up in our annual report was the shift away from social sourcing as one of the most popular methods for sourcing candidates, and a real move back to job boards as a source for candidates. And we're seeing this as well. So year on year, we've really seen a bit of a flip. So 58% last year came from non-job board sources, and now it's 51% this year that are coming from job boards. I think that with job boards, you'll tend, potentially to get, more active job seekers with, the ability to go out en masse now and apply for jobs as a candidate. Yes, so you've got more job board applications coming in as well. So we're seeing that. And then what we see really with placements is quite a mixed story. We're seeing a big shift towards perm placements. So we've seen nearly 20% growth year on year in perm placements, while contract placements have probably declined about the same amount, so 19.3%. But that's interesting as well. We're seeing lots more applications, as I was showing in the first slide, but we're starting to see some challenges here now in the middle of the funnel where, there's less perm jobs being added and less contract jobs being added. So we're getting more candidates applying to less jobs. So we're seeing a more buoyant candidate market. And I think that talks again to that, what we're seeing around the spec CVs as well, that with less jobs, specking out candidates has always been a classic way of trying to get some jobs on as well. So when we look at interviews and offers, we're seeing roughly about 8-9% on both. We're seeing a slight decrease actually on application to interview ratio year on year. So less candidates are being interviewed, but we're actually seeing quite a big spike, 10% spike in our offer rate for candidates that have been interviewed. So I don't know if that's saying that the market's more decisive at the moment, that that once you get your candidates into interview, are we seeing a better performance in terms of offers coming out the other end? And I think just the final slide here really talks something very interesting for me is when we look at the average fees, they're up both on perm and temp quite significantly. So our fees higher. We've seen a decrease in the number of jobs brought on for contract roles. Are the jobs that are coming on, more valuable for recruiters? And, is that how they're making more money? Have we found, in the industry rates have gone up quite significantly for candidates? And then that's where we're seeing the increase on both perm and temp. Is that just natural from salary increases? Your terms are are getting you more money now, same terms, because people are getting paid more. So I say just a quick run through. Didn't want to take up too much time, but any questions, anything
Thank,
perhaps Ruth, to bring to the group to discuss further from that?
thanks, David. Do you want to stop sharing your screen unless
Yep.
people want it up?
I can share the
Uh,
slides.
and you'll send fine. I'm just going to keep the recording on if everybody's happy with that, just because I think this is a really interesting debate, and then I'm going to switch it off when we go into breakout rooms. I've got some comments on that, but does anybody else want to go first? I'm
Um,
happy to lead.
I thought the conversion ratios were really interesting. I mean, was that a placement per, was about 50, just under 50% of interview to placement, which is amazing. I mean, I don't work to that. I'm at sort of 30%. So I'm
Mm.
looking at 3 interviews for a deal. So if the average is, what was it, 44% or something, that's incredible. That's really good. Because I guess this is all agency activity ratio, yeah?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. And I'd probably say I've seen fees go up, but that's because salaries have gone up. I think the introduction of minimum rates of pay has certainly impacted people higher up the skill set that I've seen. I've seen 10, 15% rate increases across some of my clients just to retain and keep their staff.
And that
So
was the bit that I picked up on. Was the average fee 5,500?
on perm, yes. Yeah.
I think that's really low.
Oh,
Or is that me? I think
I
that's a low. I think that's a low perm fee now for engineering.
I thought the same
I
thing.
I'd agree.
I
But what
assumed
I've
that was
seen
billing per month.
Sorry, go
What
on.
I've seen at my end, though, Ruth, is I've had a huge, in the last 12 months, huge demand for skilled shop floor
Yeah, and
rather
that's what
than,
surprised. That was the other bit that surprised me when you were saying there was more candidates available. I would say in our sectors, really, there's more candidates available in leadership roles for me, 100%.
agreed.
But CNC, maintenance engineers, shop floor, as I would call it, high demand and not enough candidates.
Hmm.
So that's where I think that's a bit different data.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Ruth, to be fair. And also think that the manufacturing side of it is compounded by, by unions needing them to be apprentice served with certain qualifications. That doesn't help either because you get a lot of time served
Mm,
guys, and girls that have been working in the industry for 20 years, but some companies just won't take them because they don't have an NVQ level 3, or something like
mm,
that. So that affects it as well. But I was just going to say, when you go to react, okay, if you raise your hand, so if you want, this is my suggestion because I go on a lot of these Zoom meetings and this really works. If you raise your hand, okay, then Ruth could, they'll come up in order of what they've on the screen for you, Ruth, and it'll just make it easier for you to actually say, right, you're next. And then when
yeah,
the raised hands run out, that's you get
thank you.
your first talk.
I think the point on the time served is really interesting. Jamie is smiling away. I can see her because she's just gone viral on LinkedIn with a post that she put about qualifications versus experience, and literally her post blew up, didn't it? She's nodding to me. She's on mute, but she's nodding to me. So it's a really, certain companies are very specific on it, and they don't. Some people just don't have the qualifications anymore. Maintenance engineers specifically, and specifically mechanical ones. Any other comments or questions for David? And I have to flick between two screens, so just bear with me 1 minute. Matthew, you were on page 2, you see. So
Thank you.
apologies.
Um,
And then Miles will come to you afterwards.
what was the statistic again on applications from job boards? Was that 50% of applications in general are coming off job boards from that data, or is there a different interpretation around that?
No, it's 51.7 from job boards this year we're seeing. But
In terms of searching or applications generated, sorry.
that's applications generated, so people apply
Okay,
for jobs. Yeah.
cool.
Then your other sources would be things like, the recruiter's website,
Yeah,
links posted on social media, links shared via other means, etc.
cool. Thank you.
Miles.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Ruth. David, look, thanks for sharing, obviously, the data. I find data really fascinating. There was two things that really sort of just jumped out to me, and I wanted to understand it a little bit more. Average temp fee seems to jump by 72%, and I just wanted to understand, is that because of the margin increase, or is that because of the length of the temp contract, meaning that there's more cash because people are staying longer? That just seems 72% increase year on year seemed phenomenal. So I wanted to understand where that number comes from, how it's calculated.
Sure. I'll be honest with you, Miles. I'm not too sure where it's come from. I've not looked at if it's higher fees or longer
Yeah.
contracts. That's probably a really interesting point worth exploring.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think,
because just like 72% just seemed like, oh my God,
yeah, it's a huge jump.
everybody needs to go and do business over there quickly.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing as well, though, with the increase in perm placements, that
Yeah.
businesses are looking at, more longer term strategic hires. So I think if we were to look at that, we would at
Yeah.
least find part of that's going to be,
If it's easy enough, when you send out slide deck, it'd just be really interesting to understand, because 72% year on year is a massive increase in any terms. The other one as well that I really wanted to just understand a little bit more, and it's really good to see 300% increase there or thereabouts in terms of people actively taking talent to market rather than trying to get a job and put CVs to jobs. So I think that's really cool. Obviously, this data is produced by you guys, which is brilliant. Can you track beyond that, and maybe in the next session can see what the impact of doing that, as in, can you see how many of those go to interview, how many of those go to placement
we can do.
for
Yeah.
your data? Because I think for everybody in the room, and for me as well, because I'm a nosy bugger, I've always been a huge advocate of taking talent to market in a positive, progressive way. And it'd just be good to see if there's a threefold increase in that activity, what's the impact of that? Has it resulted in success, or is it just
Mhm.
making noise?
Yeah.
Because you made the point about it's a great way of getting more jobs on, but I'm sort of thinking, yeah, we actually getting these people being interviewed, and I'll be making money out of it as well. So it'd be really, really good just to share something down the line, if you could, with that as well, please, David.
Yeah, I'll look at what we can do there. I think there's probably some very interesting stories around that
Yeah,
success, be
yeah.
that the candidate's been hired or even, just starting the relationship and turning into business, further down the line.
Cool. But thanks for sharing. Really interesting.
No, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks for your presentation. Obviously, we're with Firefish, so we probably some of those stats are probably ours, but I think it's interesting when you look at the amount of candidates that come through job applications, because in our industry, us being defence, they they go into three sectors. Okay, one, they're either complete garbage, like we get an application for a senior engineer and project manager from a guy who works at McDonald's, and no disrespect to anyone in McDonald's, but they're not qualified. Secondly, some really strong candidates generally come from overseas and they apply for the jobs. They don't read the advert. Okay, at the bottom it says you must be a British citizen or dual national with British citizenship, so we can't use them. And then the third ones, are very minute. We do actually get a decent application. It's very, very rare, to be fair. Most of ours, we're having to go the other way. We're having to go sourcing, and we're not sourcing on job boards, because that's always been our bread and butter, job boards. I mean, I'll own up, right? Me coming to the LinkedIn party, I've always found it frustrating because it's such a slow churn to get that pipeline going. So I've always had to use job boards in order to get those candidates, either through watchdogs or whatever. But I find that applications can be extremely frustrating for us. So we have to go and do all the other stuff, watchdogs, searching, LinkedIn, just to get by. So But it'll be interesting to see how many, like I think Miles said, what's the follow on from those stats? How many of these people do actually go through to interview from those figures and actually get a job offer?
Yeah, good point. Anthony.
Hi there. Yeah, just one of the things that I was confused about, I think, is there's more perm placements, isn't there, but less perm jobs. So I wonder what the time sequence is on that. Have we filled a load and we've almost filled the last perm jobs and we're about to hit a big downturn, or how would you interpret?
I think I'm interpreting that as conversion's better on the jobs that you have on. So yeah, so we're seeing it converting better. Also, yeah, I think it's conversions my answer on that.
And that ties in with the not very many interviews per placement as well. So yeah, there's been some good work going on by somebody this quarter, that's for sure.
Good stuff. Anybody else before I chuck us all into some breakout rooms and we can have some meetups and conversations? No more hands? Fabulous. Right.